Hello and welcome to the BikeRadar News Show. Today we're looking at whether mountain bike gearing has just been changed forever. Rumour has it that the 2x drivetrain could be making sort of a comeback, Tom.
I would never have predicted that. And then later in the show, we're asking whether a recent product launch suggests Mavic could be about to revolutionise its entire business plan.
No. And finally, we take a look at real-life Zwift racing. Yes, you heard that right. I'm still not sure what it is.
Yeah,
anyway,
whatever that is.
Let's get into it. I'm Liam Cahill, and with me is Tom Law. Tom, we've seen some very exciting developments in the land of mountain bike group sets recently, but is there an even bigger one on the horizon?
Well, if classified are to be believed, Liam, then it could well be. Yes, the brand that bought us a 2-speed rear hub for road and gravel bikes has expanded into the world of mountain biking with their new PowerShift Boost hub.
Now, for those unfamiliar with classified hubs, they're a wireless 2-speed shifting internal gear rear hub with a cassette mounted, obviously in the traditional place, to give you the range of a 2x setup with the simplicity and relatively low weight of a 1x unit.
Yeah, it's an interesting setup for sure. We've seen the likes of Shimano and Roloff, among others, make great internal gear hubs in the past. Even the original Sturmey Archer, of course, going way, way back.
I had to service one of those things.
Did you?
Yeah, it was a nightmare.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. There's also the old Troubative Hammerschmidt crankset as well for anyone who's old enough or sad enough to remember those. So this, Liam, was basically a 2-speed crankset with a planetary gear that had an overdrive feature. So it basically removed the front mech from the equation, but as you can imagine, it never really caught on because of the excess drag in the system. So while Classified are the first to try this kind of system, it's a bit of an amalgamation of pre-existing tech.
We've ridden Classified's hub on the road and gravel, where we thought it was actually brilliant. But Tom, how do you see it working in the world of mountain biking? Is it a game changer?
I'm always open to new ideas, don't get me wrong. I mean, on the road, I can see where it does make a lot of sense, but for mountain bikes, I'm just not sure. I mean, we've seen SRAM's new T-type transmissions, which are basically the same gear range, 520% on that one, and Shimano are pretty close with 510% with their Hyperglide 12-speed systems versus the 530% for the Classified hubs. But my main concern, though, would be shifting across the cassette. So Classified system is claimed to shift between the two ratios inside the hub in just 150 milliseconds. But will its proprietary cassette shift as well as T-type or Hyperglide? I'm not so sure on that one.
So I have used the gravel version of this system, and that cassette, I have to say, is really, really nice. You get super smooth shifting across the cassette, and I can really see this catching on in the world of mountain biking.
Classified also claim you should run a 10% bigger chainring, so you'll have reduced ground clearance around that, which is not ideal, especially on a lot of bikes with extremely low bottom brackets these days. They also claim the 11 to 40 tooth 12-speed cassette means you can supposedly run a rear derailleur with a shorter cage. You know, it's brilliant in principle, but SRAM only produces their 12-speed mountain bike derailleurs in one length, so you don't have that option of going shorter. So unless Classified plans to make their own, then I can't see how that claim stacks up. The principle is indeed correct, but practically, I'm not really sure that one works.
I bet there'll be a shorter version coming from Classified.
You'd have to think so. I mean, you can run Shimano because they do shorter medium cage cassettes for their 10 to 45 tooth cassettes, so all is not lost. And despite all that, I am really keen to try it out. A little bit apprehensive, but we'll just have to see how it goes.
I genuinely think you'll love it when you try it. But what do you think? Are we on a path back to the 2-speed drivetrain? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Now, time for another bit of mountain bike news.
Yes, before we get onto some exciting road and gravel news, Specialized has launched a new version of their epic cross-country race bike, and oddly, it actually features less travel than its predecessor.
Is that the one that looks a lot like the Trek Super Caliber? Just
Just a little bit. I'm not going to use the word tracing paper, but there is a slight resemblance between the two, Liam, for sure. And if you want to know all about the new Ebike and its clever shock hidden under the top tube, then check out our first ride review in the card above our heads and the link in the description.
But that's not the only mountain bike tech news. We've got some more coming later, with Fox announcing 2 new rear shocks for XC, downcountry and trail bikes. In a move that pretty much, well, no one saw coming, Mavic has plotted a bit of a brand rebirth.
Yep, you'd have got incredibly long odds on the French brand producing an e-bike motor, but with this first prototype, Mavic has the potential to create the first sub 10 kilo e-road bike.
Now, I have to say that would shake up the market. There is a lot going on here, so I'll give you the whistle-stop tour. It's got a 250 watt drive unit developing up to 50 Newton meters of torque. It can deliver up to 150% pedal assist. So if I was doing, say, like 200 watts, I'd effectively be doing 500 watts.
Which is a big jump.
Quite a lot.
That's quite a lot of assistance, yeah.
Now, it's all powered by a 360 watt-hour battery that's housed inside the down tube. It includes a power meter, which is accurate to plus minus 2%. There's a range extender available, remote controls and apps in development. The motor disengages from the drivetrain completely when not in use, so there's very little drag, and it attaches to normal cranksets.
I imagine there's a lot of paperwork that goes with something that technologically advanced.
There are a lot of patents, 15 of which actually. So that includes the cyclodial reducer.
We'll go with that.
Cyclodial reducer. Mavic, basically, that's all we know right now, but 2025, 2026 is the launch timescale of
roughly
this.
speaking.
So you'll be waiting quite a while, but it's coming.
Yeah. So what do we know about the motor itself? So obviously this is still pretty new and in development.
Yeah, well, the unit sits within the bottom bracket. It's cylindrical in shape and it uses a brushless motor that can spin up to 4,500 RPM. That's like my sprint.
Is it really?
Now, this connects to a patented 2-ring cyclodial reducer, which in turn connects to a clutch mechanism. The drive side face of the motor unit features a faceplate. This engages with a bracket that is fitted to a crankset. Assistance is delivered through this. So the outer plate also features a 2-pole free hub design. This enables the motor to mechanically disengage completely from the drivetrain when not in use.
Right, so that is very, very clever stuff. One complaint though that I do see come up a lot with e-bikes is that they're quite obviously e-bikes. You know, they look very different to a regular bike.
Absolutely.
People seem to want a more subtle system, which is easy to understand.
Well, I'd say that's an entirely fair point, but look at this BMC. There's no way from that photo that I'd say that you could tell that this was an e-bike.
No, absolutely
In
not.
fact, you have to take a look at the bottom bracket from the non-drive side to notice anything different. I mean, in theory, this area needs adapting, but Mavic says that no other structural adaptations are required. In theory, and as demonstrated by BMC, this means the brand would only need to modify the bottom bracket area, plus include some internal housing for like the battery, the charge port, and the top tube control unit.
Yeah, so some subtle changes that aren't going to be easy, but it's not a wholesale change.
Absolutely. So this compares to Fazio's Ovation motor system, which requires more extensive modifications to be accommodated into a frame. That includes a dropout battery design in the down tube, for example.
So Mavic say such minimal integration means brands can keep the overall characteristics of a pre-existing bike. So if Cahill wanted to put it in their Super Sig, for example, or something like that, which leads to a more natural ride feel. It believes this is one of the leading issues a potential road and gravel bike customer might have, and it's understandable. You know, you don't want a big, bulky looking bike when you're out and about, you know, and give away your advantage while you're steaming past people everywhere.
The brand also says that although a rear hub-based motor arguably requires fewer design changes, a mid-mounted motor retains wheel upgradability.
Because that has to be better for the consumer, hasn't it? Hasn't Ash, our technical editor, written that?
You know what? Actually, he has. The verdict is currently a bit mixed. So it's a little bit noisy on climbs. And then if you stop pedaling quickly, the system can shove you forward a little bit.
Not ideal.
Just for a fraction of a second. Now, those issues are being worked on. And Ash says that the system feels totally drag-free when disengaged, which is a real highlight.
Yeah, that is a real highlight, especially compared to other e-bike systems already out there. So definitely one to watch, I would say.
Now, Tom, before we have a look at what Zwift racing in real life looks like, I'd like to plug the Paris-Roubaix Tech video that we uploaded right after the race. All of the hottest tech news is in there, including on-the-fly tyre inflation devices, tubeless tyre fails, and how to make an aero bike comfy enough for the cobbles.
And if that wasn't enough, Liam had to work a bank holiday to write that one. It's a hard life being a bike journalist. So make like an Easter lamb and go and watch that after we finish here. There'll be a link on the screen.
Right, mate, time for Zwift racing in real life.
This does look like ridiculous fun, but also potentially extremely dangerous.
Yes, this is the e-bike racing series that was initially set to launch in 2022 but got delayed, and it consists of multiple rounds in various international city centres. The first race is now set to be London this summer.
So it consists of 6 to 10 teams with equal numbers of male and female riders and a field size of roughly 30 to 50 in total.
So BMC have created a specialist e-bike just for this event. Do you want to know the top speed?
It's going to be a million miles an hour.
90 kilometres per hour.
90 kilometres an hour. So that's 50 miles an hour in Church of England, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. That's all we know. Ed Clancy is the UK ambassador for this event. He's apparently ridden it, but they're not saying anything more about it. So,
I mean, I presume he's still alive.
Yes, I'm sure. But yeah, that's all we know about the bike for now. So the series has been designed to promote e-bikes as a clean mobility option, which I personally fully support.
Great alternative.
I'm just not sure that racing them around at up to 90 kilometres per hour is the best way to do that. Who knows? The one thing I want to know, will they have to wear leathers at that speed?
It is an FIM sanctioned event, which FIM is of course for motorcycle racing, so it's not out of the realms of possibility that they'll have to get rid of the lycra and go for the full leather look. Interesting to see.
Stay tuned on this one.
Yeah, definitely. Right, back to mountain bike tech and those new Fox shocks we mentioned earlier. Fox's float shocks have been unchanged for a fair while now, whereas we've seen the Float X and the Float X2 see significant changes in that same time.
So does float actually mean anything?
It's not an acronym as such, it's just what Fox calls its air springs, like RockShox with their Solo Air and Debonair springs.
As a roadie, this all sounds very complicated, I have to admit.
It is a little bit confusing, I'll give you that, Liam, but I'll try to make it easy, just like Fox have done with these new shocks, as they've tried to simplify things for you. So previously the range was made up of the Float DPS, the Float X and the Float X2. Now they've split the Float DPS into two separate models, the Float SL and the Standard Float. Now the Float SL is smaller and lighter, and it uses a smaller air can, smaller diameter shock shaft and internal damper piston, so it should feel a little racier and firmer of the two, making it ideal for cross-country bikes. The Float is very similar because after all it is a Fox shock and they are quite similar, but it is beefed up so it's heavier but will have more oil and air volume to help it maintain a little bit of better performance on descents at the cost of a little bit of that efficiency. It also has just two compression settings, open and firm, with a 3-position adjuster for the open mode. The Float SL, however, is 3-position, so it has a middle setting in between the open and firm. So weirdly, it's actually more adjustable of the two, which you'd expect that to be the other way around, because obviously heavier shocks are normally more adjustable than their smaller, lighter brethren. The SL is also available with a 2-position remote lockout lever if you prefer. It does mean that they now have 4 different shocks to compete on a level pegging with RockShox, who also have a new shock that's not exactly out in the wild. It's hidden away, but not hidden away. But it's also unreleased, which we think is a new Vivid Air. So you'll have the Float SL up against the RockShox Deluxe, which is actually a really, really good shock. You'll have the Float X up against the Deluxe, again, another great shock. The Fox Float X2 squaring up to the RockShox Super Deluxe. And finally, the Float X2 fighting it out with that as yet unreleased new Vivid Air, or whatever on earth it ends up being called. Liam.
Yeah? Oh, I'm not going to pretend that I know what you're talking about. If, like me, you want to see more of these lovely bouncers, then check out the link in our news story over on BikeRadar.com.
It's far more exciting than me rabbiting on and waffling and sending Liam to sleep.
Sure.
It's that time of the year that we all love. It's BikeRadar's Bike of the Year.
Yep. Our technical editors have been busy testing the hottest bikes of the year to find out the best of the best in a huge range of categories.
Our mountain bike test team has been out in what looked like a scorching hot Italy, testing the top 3 bikes from each category, whereas the rest of us definitely pulled the short straw and got to photograph the rest in what can only be described as a tropical monsoon at Bike Park Wales.
Meanwhile, our team of rapid road testers have been doing the same, just without the trip to Italy.
Yeah, they also got to go to Wales.
So our Bike of the Year videos will be popping up on the channel, so make sure that you're subscribed with the bell icon clicked so that you can see them before anyone else. Are we going to see a return of 2x drivetrains to the mountain bike world? Will real live Zwift races on Tron bikes replace the Grand Tours? And are we staring at the dawn of a fully motorised e-cycling world?
Hopefully not, but let us know what you think in the comments and we'll see you in the next one.